It all started when Moscow PD said, "You're just going to have to trust us on this one." Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk about Judge John Judge's decision to move the Bryan Kohberger trial. Now, I don't think this is a big surprise to a lot of us, because we've talked about this quite a bit in previous videos, and I think a lot of us expected that there would be a change of venue. Now, we know that this trial has been moved to Ada County, which we talked about in my last video. Ada County seems like a very sensible location to move the Bryan Kohberger trial. Now, Judge Judge decided to move this trial for a number of reasons, and today I want to talk about those reasons. In my opinion, Judge Judge made the right decision. Move the trial and remove a lot of the doubt. Now, Bryan Kohberger and the defense cannot say that they were doomed from the very beginning because of the prejudice in Latah County. Now, this isn't saying anything bad about the people of Latah County. It makes complete sense that they would be passionate about this case. 4 young college students lost their lives in their tight-knit community. So it makes total sense that they would be very personal about it. They want to convict whoever committed these crimes, and they believe that Moscow Police Department has their man. The problem is that a lot of people believe that if law enforcement says it, then it must be true. But that's not always accurate. An arrest is not a conviction. Defendants are found not guilty all of the time. It's very, very possible that the prosecution in this Bryan Kohberger case could drop the ball. Look what just happened in the Alec Baldwin case. Alec Baldwin's charges were completely dismissed because a prosecutor got caught hiding evidence. So it happens, and it could very well happen in this case as well. In my opinion, I have not seen any solid evidence that would prove that Bryan Kohberger had any part in these Idaho 4 crimes. Throughout the preliminary hearings, Judge Judge appeared to be confused. He didn't appear to be very confident, and in my opinion, he didn't have control over this courtroom. Now, a lot of that might be because the prosecution's case is all over the place. The PCA has fallen apart, there's evidence missing, and you have Bill Thompson standing at the prosecutor's table throwing a tantrum over a PowerPoint presentation. I mean, it seems like there's more important things to talk about, Bill. Like, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that proves that Bryan Kohberger was part of these crimes? It just doesn't make sense. And in my opinion, the magnitude of these crimes has overwhelmed Latah County. They've spent a lot of time and effort just trying to figure out how to hide all of the information. They want to present the information, but they don't want anybody to see it. So basically, they're going to try to hold these hearings without giving up any information, which I think is going to be rather tricky. I think it's kind of silly, actually. I mean, we're in court. You have your suspect. You have your defendant that you have told the people this is the individual that committed these crimes. So why are we keeping everything so secretive? Why do we have to hide all of the information? In my opinion, this gag order has caused more problems than it's been beneficial. You know, I knew that they were going to have to move this trial. I've talked about this in previous videos, that they are going to have to move this trial. And I knew that because I felt like this has been on a downhill slide since they first entered that courtroom, since Bill Thompson first stood up and basically scolded the defense and the judge and basically told them how to do their jobs. You know, Bill Thompson has been so concerned about hiding all of this information. He's kind of been the gatekeeper when it comes to any details and any information that might just leak out into the public. So there's a reason why this trial was moved. There's a reason why Judge believed that there's a prejudice in Latah County. And I don't blame the people of Latah County. I blame the prosecution and the investigators for how they've handled this case. And that's what's put them in this position. Moscow Police Department and the prosecution, in my opinion, have led the people of Latah County to believe that this is going to be a slam dunk, that they got this guy. You know, they basically describe it as they're following him on traffic cams all the way from his apartment in Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho, to the King Roadhouse. And then they're following him again as he leaves the crime scene in his white Hyundai Elantra. He left his DNA inside the crime scene, and it just so happened that he left it on the accessory to a weapon. How convenient is that? So, of course, the people of this community believe that this defendant, Bryan Kohberger, is guilty. We have to remember that not everybody is doing their homework. Not everybody is following this case as closely as we are. A lot of the people in this community probably don't even realize that there's a lot of major problems with this evidence. There's a lot of problems with what law enforcement has told the people of this community. It's not as cut and dry as basically they saw Bryan Kohberger at the King Roadhouse and he left his DNA there. It's not that cut and dry. But if you're just somebody watching this on mainstream media, or you're listening to interviews from people who believe that Bryan Kohberger is guilty, then of course you're going to have that same view. And that's what's happened to the people in Latah County. When Moscow Police Department said, "You're just going to have to trust us," that's when I believe that all of this began. Because they basically said, "You're just going to have to trust us." And that's when they started to control the narrative without any evidence to prove what they were saying. Because in my opinion, when somebody says, "You're just going to have to trust me on this one," usually that means that they're going to hide everything and they just expect you to take their word for it, which is exactly what Moscow Police Department did. Well, the people of Latah County did trust them, and now this trial is being moved. Because, as I said, a lot of people believe that when law enforcement says something, that it must be true. A lot of people believe that when law enforcement arrests somebody, then they must be guilty. But that's not always the case. The problem is that mainstream media and a lot of these interviews with people who already believe that Bryan Kohberger is guilty do not tell the people of Latah County that the evidence is questionable. They leave that information out. They let these people continue to believe that they've done all this amazing police work and they have the right guy. So of course, it's going to create a prejudice in this small, close-knit community. Something else that happened is that Judge stepped away from this case. He basically is going to drop this case in another judge's lap. Now that judge has already been determined, and we'll talk about that in another video. But this is something that we talked about when these hearings first began. And that is that all of these people know each other. This is a very tight-knit community. The prosecution, the judge, the defense, they all work together. So they all know each other. And I said from the beginning of these hearings that this was going to be a problem. I don't know if you remember, but in the very first hearing, It looked like a bunch of buddies getting together. You know, the representation, the judge, it looked like they were all just kind of having one big reunion. So I knew that this was going to be a problem from the very first hearing that we saw. Now, it doesn't surprise me that Judge decided to step away from this case because, like I said, in my opinion, he did not appear confident in presiding over this case. He didn't appear to have control of this courtroom. In my opinion, there was some conflicts of interest when it came to Judge. I thought it was odd that they turned over all of the DNA evidence that they had, which a lot of it's missing, but they turned over what they had to Judge. And then he looked through it and decided what the defense would be allowed to see. Now, does that not seem odd that the judge would have more information than the defense? To me, that seemed like a conflict of interest. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Judge stepped away from this case. So now we have a new courthouse, new county, new jail, new judge. So it's basically a total reset for this Bryan Kohberger case. In my opinion, if the prosecution had just presented some evidence that proved that Bryan Kohberger, either was a part of these crimes or committed these crimes, or even that he was connected to these crimes in any way, then in my opinion, I believe that the change of venue would have been a non-factor. I feel like if a lot of us were able to see some solid evidence, then we'd feel as though, okay, they do have proof. The prosecution has proof, so it's really not going to matter what courthouse this case is tried in. But they didn't do that. Instead, they've been sneaky and secretive and kind of kept everything in the dark, which leads people to believe that they're not doing things on the up and up. So, as I said, in my opinion, this change of venue has been caused by, Latah County. Now, a lot of people have said this is a big win for Bryan Kohberger. This is a big win for the defense. Now, I guess in some way it is a win because now he's going to get a fair trial. But in my opinion, getting a fair trial is not an advantage. Moving this trial, in my opinion, does not give either side an advantage. All it does is level the playing field. Because in my opinion, the prosecution did have an advantage in Latah County. In my opinion, they had an unfair advantage. So taking this trial out of Latah County, in my opinion, levels the playing field. It does not give Bryan Kohberger an advantage. A fair trial is not a gift. A fair trial is Bryan Kohberger's right. He has a right to a fair trial. So to me, it's not really an advantage for Bryan Kohberger, and it's not an advantage for the prosecution. To me, this is a step in the right direction for a fair trial. When I say fair trial, I don't mean just for Bryan Kohberger, but I mean also for the prosecution. We want a fair trial all the way around. I mean, it appears that, of course, that's what we would all want. Why would we want to see someone convicted who didn't commit the crime? That wouldn't make sense. So it seems as though we would all want a fair trial on an even playing field. In my opinion, Latah County is just not set up for a trial of this magnitude. Watching the hearings, especially from the very beginning, watching these hearings, it was very apparent that this small county was not ready for this. They were not prepared for this. This prosecution, in my opinion, is not prepared for this. It's very odd because in the very beginning of these hearings, if you remember, Bill Thompson was ready to go to trial tomorrow. He was ready right now. Now, almost a year later, we realize that they don't even have their case together. They don't even have all of their evidence. How are they going to be ready to go to trial immediately without all of the evidence? We don't even know how much evidence is missing. In my opinion, it's very possible that a new judge, a new courthouse, may be able to organize all of this and make sense of all of this. So that's what I'm really hoping for. I really believe that this change of venue is going to be good for everyone, not just Bryan Kohberger. Maybe there's going to be some more organization. Maybe there'll be some more decisions that can be made without, weeks of deliberation by the judge. And, Judge was never very good at making decisions right away. So it's very possible that this new judge is going to be on top of things and that he is going to move things along. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does with all of these loose ends that have just been dropped in his lap. It's going to be interesting to see how this all, works. Obviously, they're going to move Bryan Kohberger to a different jail. He's going to be in a different county and a different judge. And I think that this is exactly what this case needs. Some organization. Somebody needs to come in and put all these pieces together, try to figure out what's going on. The prosecution doesn't have all of their evidence, which means the defense can't prepare for the trial because they don't have all of their evidence. It might also help that this new judge doesn't know all of these people personally, doesn't have personal ties to the representation. In my opinion, this was a good decision by Judge. I don't feel like it gives anybody an unfair advantage. I feel like it basically puts everybody on a level playing field. And now I feel like it will remove a lot of the doubt about whether Bryan Kohberger can get a fair trial. Because I don't believe that he was going to get that fair trial in Latah County. So we're going to talk more about this because, as I said, they just determined that this is going to be in Ada County. They've just named the new judge. So we're going to talk about this because this is going to be a change. They're going to be moving Bryan Kohberger into a different county jail. So we're going to talk about this. And let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that this was a good move to move this trial? Thanks for hanging out with me today. I do appreciate it. And if you liked my video, please hit the like button. Consider subscribing to my channel. Again, I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.